William James was an American psychologist and philosopher, a prodigy intellectual from a very young age. He was denied entry into Harvard at the age of 9 for being too emotionally immature, but was later accepted at age 11. After completing his studies in psychology, which eventually earned him the nickname Father of Psychology, he eventually turned his focuses towards philosophy, offering equally notable contributions to the field. As influential and revolutionary as his life and produced works were, I still feel as if the implications of his philosophical and psychological contributions haven't been quite felt. This could be due to the complicated subject material presented in his writings. It could be because his work was constantly challenged and subverted by contemporaries, or it could be because his proposals are just wrong. Ultimately, that's for you to decide. But I am of the opinion that many of his observations have been relatively overlooked considering the notability of his name alone. I'd be willing to bet that most people have heard the name William James, and that less than half of them could recite a quick general overview of his work. On first-time reading, his suggestions seem to be so counterintuitive that their foundational assumptions must be misplaced. But continue reading, and eventually this counterintuitive impression will dissipate, and you'll at least be given a coherent view of his world. In this video, I will mostly be covering his views on the nature of emotions, a worldview I believe modernity is secretly craving. In his observations, the moment our senses observe something, this instantly causes a physiological reaction in the body and in turn is accompanied by an emotional response. This emotional response is the true connection between subject and object, observer and observed, which William viewed as a single unit. After an emotional response occurs, thoughts then arise to try and explain or theorize the nature of the emotion and then contextualize it for future application. If the emotion was connected to a memory accumulated from past experience, then that memory becomes illuminated, but only after the response has occurred. To James, this is how we become psychologically conditioned. Broken down, he essentially said, something you think funny happens, you laugh spontaneously, the feeling of joy then ensues, then thoughts arise to retroactively explain and then integrate the experience. Rather than the commonly accepted view, the cognitive mind-brain identifies humor. This triggers a joyous feeling of humor. The feeling of humor makes the body laugh. The feeling of joyous laughter in this case is the empirical connection between subject and object according to William James. He viewed empiricism's conclusions of an inherent separation of subject and object as short-sighted. Because of this, he coined something called radical empiricism. This called into question what we should be considering empirical evidence. Essentially, radical empiricism was the idea that to paint an accurate picture of reality, we must include all directly experienced phenomena. This includes thoughts, feelings, and emotions, in addition to the already assumed objective world. In James's eyes, life was one total experience, subjective and objective, while emotion or feeling was in a way the bridge between them. William James once said, "We are like islands in the sea, separate on the surface, but connected in the deep." In a sense, he implied that meaning is embedded in the phenomenon of life. Because the totality of experience includes both subjectivity and objectivity, the meaning projected onto experience is the same thing as the experience inherently containing the meaning. Do we feel something is beautiful because it contains beauty, or does it contain beauty because we projected the feeling of beauty onto it? It's still the same experience, despite the theory of its relationship to us. The only part that matters is that we know we experience beauty in relation to that something, and that it's real. When we take into consideration James's point of view in regards to the totality of life playing the role of both object and conscious observer, we see that the answer to that question to him was irrelevant. Going back now to how these emotions come about, we see that in James's view, as we become aware of an object that we are preconditioned or not to see beauty in, we feel a tingling sensation in the body. The feeling we call beauty is subsequently felt, and then thoughts about the object arise to dissect the form and explain the experience in rational linguistic terms. Essentially, James didn't think the mind played a part in the formation of emotions. They were generated directly from the body. Therefore, most of our actions were predetermined by physiological responses to the environment and its relationship to us given our past experiences. These experiences do not pass through the mind first and then choose how the body responds. Rather, the body confronts direct experience, and from the experience, it responds autonomously, generating an emotional felt equivalent that influences or even dictates immediate action. Thoughts, or the activity of mind, happens afterwards. Once the mind arises after an authentic engagement with life, i.e. when we feel an emotion in response to objects, of mind or matter, it uses the information gathered to more accurately respond to the next significant experience. If I'm hiking in the woods and come across a bear, my physiology would instantly respond with pupil dilation, perspiration, and running. Thus, the feeling of fear would follow, and only after I no longer sense danger would my rational thinking return. Or, if I have a past experience working with bears, or some familiarity with them, I may remain calm, skipping the emotional response stage, and accurately be able to recall and review my past experience with bears. Thoughts are the last chain in the link of physiological responses, but they conditionally dictate how we respond to the next experience. I think this is the major evolutionary benefit of the human mind and its ability to not only remember and think, but reflect and rearrange those memories and thoughts. By the process of accumulating experiential knowledge, we have the ability to redirect the way we respond to nature. In James's words, the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. I believe the problem is that we have overstimulated our sensory systems by becoming increasingly tolerant of a cluttered and toxic environment. Because of the vast and unending amount of experience the mind is given to review and contextualize, it has become overloaded. Like any of our senses, overstimulation can cause them to become damaged, conditioned in an undesirable direction, or completely numbed. If I turn my stereo up all the way and listen for a long enough time, my eardrums will burst. If I stare at a light for too long without blinking, I will damage my retina. Likewise, if I use my mind non-stop for 20 years to interpret and logically review every experience that doesn't directly affect my immediate survival, eventually it will become damaged. Mental health issues, or it will become conditioned to believe that the issues it has been employed to deal with on a daily basis are in fact a threat to my survival, causing automated physiological and emotional responses to everyday phenomena. The art of being wise is the art of knowing what to overlook, William James once said. I think by this he meant we should overlook the things that we have used radical empiricism to declare as not true, and then investigate the nature of reality divorced from those trivial distractions. This seems to be a valid approach for curing negative thought patterns that many of us tend towards. By seeing our actions as observations of a pre-wired organic body, rather than choices we frustratingly can't seem to control in the heat of the moment, we can take the first step in starting to differentiate the inherently real from the conditionally experienced, freeing our thought patterns from the shackles of biology.